Mount Longdon, June 1982, midnight. 3 para had been fighting uphill for 4 hours. The Argentine 7th Infantry Regiment held the ridgeline in depth. Bunkers cut into rock, mutual fire arcs, positions that covered every approach. B Company was stalled. 4 Platoon, ordered to clear the northern side of the ridge, was pinned by machine gun fire from at least 3 emplacements on the high ground. They were taking casualties. The platoon commander went forward to reconnoitre and was hit in the leg. Command passed to Sergeant Ian McKay. McKay assessed the situation. No further advance was possible. He issued orders, took 3 men, and charged directly at the Argentine position. The corporal was seriously wounded within seconds. A private was killed. Another fell wounded. McKay continued alone. He reached the position. He attacked it with grenades. His body was found there, on the bunker he had assaulted. He was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, the last one earned in the 20th century. What makes this worth understanding is not just the act itself, it is what forced it. McKay's men were pinned because the Argentine machine gun positions had effective range and volume of fire, but so did the British. The L7 GPMG was there that night on Mount Longdon, providing covering fire as McKay moved. It was the same basic design that both sides carried, because Argentina, like Britain, had licensed the FN mag. Same 7.62 by 51mm round, the same belt-fed architecture, operating on the same mechanical principles. The men who tried to replace that weapon never fought from that ridgeline. The L7 GPMG did not appear because someone had a clever idea in a design office. It appeared because 2 British weapons had failed to solve the same problem, and the army could no longer maintain both of them. After the Second World War, British infantry sections carried the Bren light machine gun. Excellent weapon. Magazine-fed, accurate, reliable, beloved by the men who used it. But limited. Its 30-round magazine restricted sustained fire. To get volume, you needed the Vickers, a belt-fed medium machine gun requiring a dedicated crew, a tripod, a supply of water for the cooling jacket, and far more transport and crew support than any section weapon could demand. The Vickers weighed over 15 kilograms without its tripod. Bringing it to the fight was a logistical problem as much as a tactical one. The question the War Office faced in the late 1950s was not abstract. NATO was standardizing on the 7.62 by 51mm cartridge, which meant the Bren, rechambered as the L4, and the Vickers were both ending service lives. The army needed a single weapon that could do both jobs, light enough to move with an infantry section, capable enough to provide battalion-level suppression when mounted on a tripod. The Americans had the M60, the French had the AA-52, the Germans were developing what would become the MG3. Britain looked at all of them. In trials completed by 1957, the Belgian FN mag, designed under Ernest Verviers at Fabrique Nationale d'Armes de Guerre in Herstal, outperformed every competitor. It was adopted in 1961 as the L7A1 and entered production at the Royal Small Arms Factory, Enfield, in 1963. The L7A2 variant, with an improved feed mechanism, a 10-position gas regulator, and a polymer stock, followed. Production at Enfield ran until 1988, when the site closed. The weapon specifications were not accidental. 7.62 by 51mm NATO caliber, approximately 13 kilograms unloaded. Effective range on the bipod, 800 meters. On the L4A1 tripod with the C2 optical sight, in the sustained fire roll operated by a 2-man crew, 1,800 meters, 750 rounds per minute. A quick change barrel system that allowed a trained gunner to swap a hot barrel without tools. One weapon that could be carried by a section and, when circumstances required, mounted and used as a medium machine gun. The procurement logic was correct. To understand what the L7 was built against, you have to understand what the Argentine army believed in 1982. Argentina had also licensed the FN mag. They carried the same weapon under the designation Ametralladora Tipo 6020. Their 7th Infantry Regiment on Mount Longdon understood machine gun employment doctrine. Their positions on the ridgeline were mutually supporting. Each emplacement covered the approaches to the others. Their fire arcs were interlocked. This was not amateur work. The defenders had studied the same NATO-adjacent doctrine the British forces used and applied it correctly to terrain that favoured the defender. Their assumption was rational. A night assault, uphill, across broken ground laced with anti-personnel mines and covered by overlapping machine gun arcs, would either be repelled or would cost the attackers so heavily the momentum could not be sustained. The mutual support between Argentine emplacements was not a weakness in their doctrine. It was, on that ridgeline, the doctrine working exactly as designed. The position had depth. Even if an outer position was taken, the defenders behind it could continue to suppress the ground that the attackers had just crossed. At Mount Longdon, on the night of 11th to 12th June 1982, 3 Para's attack did stall. B Company's 4 and 5 platoons were pinned for a sustained period. Casualties accumulated. The platoon commander was wounded. Progress halted. What the Argentine doctrine had not fully accounted for was this. The same gun suppressing the advance was covering McKay's charge. British GPMG fire, laid from positions to the rear and flanks, held the heads of the Argentine crews down during the seconds McKay needed to cross the open ground. The suppression that the Argentine machine guns were designed to provide against the British advance was itself being countered by the same weapon type. 2 sides, same machine gun, same caliber. The difference was in how the supporting fire was coordinated in the last moments of the assault. The Argentine position was taken. Its crew were killed. The adjacent positions, whose fire arcs had been counting on that emplacement to remain active, lost part of their mutual support. The advance, which had been fixed, became possible again. By the 14th of June 1982, Port Stanley had fallen. But the question the L7 had answered on that ridgeline was not about one battle. It was about a weapon that could, in the same night, suppress at range and be carried forward by a platoon sergeant who had not slept in 36 hours. Here is the dark reason the L7A2 is still in service. The Ministry of Defence tried to get rid of it 3 times, and each time, the actual conditions of combat reversed the decision. The first attempt came in the late 1970s. The Army initiated what would become the SA-80 programme, the small arms for the 1980s. The intention was to field a bullpup individual weapon alongside a light support weapon that would replace the GPMG at section level. The L86A1 light support weapon, a longer-barreled variant of the L85A1 rifle, was accepted into service by 1985. A decade and a half of development, redesigns, and deferred acceptance trials. Part of the deferral in 1984 was because the weapon could not group consistently during automatic fire at varying ranges. This was the specific problem it was intended to solve. The Ministry of Supply pressed on regardless. The Gulf War in 1991 confirmed what the trials had already suggested. The Lancet report, commissioned immediately after the conflict, identified more than 50 faults in the L85 and L86 systems. The LSW had experienced extraction problems under operational conditions and produced more stoppages than its companion rifle. User confidence was, in the language of internal documents, low. By 2003, the L86 had been removed from its section fire support role entirely, replaced at the platoon level by the FN Minimi, designated the L108A1 and L110A2, which used 5.56 by 45mm ammunition. This was the second attempt, not to replace the GPMG outright, but to make it unnecessary at the infantry section level. The theory was sound. A lighter 5.56mm belt-fed weapon would reduce the ammunition burden and give sections organic suppressive fire at reasonable ranges. On operations in Iraq and in the built-up areas of Afghanistan's early years, the Minimi performed adequately. Range was the flaw the planners had not accounted for. The effective ceiling of the 5.56mm cartridge at suppression distances is approximately 300 meters. In Helmand province, more than half of all contact engagements were occurring beyond that range. Taliban fighters using 7.62mm weapons, PKMs, Dragunovs, could engage from distances at which the Minimi produced noise without effect. By 2009, the L7A2 was returning to British infantry sections, not as a temporary measure, as a recognition that the range gap was not a planning oversight. It was the actual character of the war. The Ministry of Defence had scheduled the L7A2 for withdrawal from British Army service in 2015. In April 2025, the MOD announced that the out-of-service date had been moved to 2035 and that a replacement programme, Project Cairns, was being developed to find what would eventually supersede it in the infantry role. 64 years in service, 2 declared replacements that failed, 1 replacement that partially succeeded and then reverted. The L7A2, which the procurement system spent decades trying to retire, now has an out-of-service date a full decade further away than the year this video was created. The numbers make the GPMG's return impossible to argue with. In Helmand province, the L7A2 was used in a configuration that its designers had not fully anticipated. With the L4A1 tripod and the Javelin missile system's sight unit repurposed as an optical sight, British troops employed the weapon for predicted and harassing fire at ranges reported beyond 2,700 meters. The average elevation of Afghanistan, approximately 1,884 meters above sea level, reduces air density, which extends the useful range of any 7.62mm projectile. The L7A2 was reaching targets at distances that neither the L86A1 LSW nor the Minimi L110A2 were mechanically capable of engaging with any effect. The FN Minimi, firing 5.56 by 45mm, has a suppression envelope of roughly 300 meters in the bipod roll. The L7A2, in the sustained fire roll on a tripod, reaches 1,800 meters under standard conditions, 6 times that distance. In the thinned air of Helmand at altitude, that ceiling extended further still. A section carrying a Minimi and encountering a Taliban machine gun team at 600 meters was suppressed and unable to respond in kind. A section carrying the L7A2 was not. Helmand also produced a structural lesson that the procurement system had not absorbed from the Falklands. The Taliban, by 2007 and 2008, had understood the effective range limit of the 5.56mm weapons British sections were carrying, and had adjusted their tactics accordingly, initiating contact at distances beyond that envelope and withdrawing before British forces could close to engagement range. This was not sophisticated. It was arithmetic. You find the distance your opponent cannot reach, and you operate from it. Returning the L7A2 to section level changed that calculation. A weapon that can suppress at 800 meters in the light roll and 1,800 in the sustained fire roll does not leave a gap that an adversary can exploit by simply stepping back. The tactical adjustment that the Taliban had made, one that was working, stopped working when 7.62mm came back into the sections. The L86A1 LSW had cost roughly £90 million in the Heckler and Koch remediation programme alone, between 2000 and 2006, to address the faults identified in the Lancet report. It was withdrawn from service in 2019. The L110A2 Minimi was withdrawn from infantry sections in 2018. The gun that both were designed to replace outlasted both of them. Meanwhile, the FN MAG, under various designations, is now operated by over 80 nations. The United States Army adopted it as the M240, following tests in the late 1970s. Tests in which it produced the highest reliability scores ever recorded for a machine gun in US Army evaluation. The same design, with minor national modifications, serves on attack helicopters, naval vessels, armoured vehicles, and in the hands of dismounted infantry on 6 continents. Production continues. The tool has not changed because the problem has not changed. There is a pattern in the history of the L7A2 that runs through every attempt to replace it. The institution solved a problem it had, not the problem the next war would present. The L86A1 solved the weight problem of the GPMG and the logistics problem of the 7.62mm cartridge. On paper, fielding a lighter support weapon firing the same round as the individual weapon was rational. The section could carry more ammunition, share magazines, simplify its sustainment. The War Office had learnt from Korea and Northern Ireland that logistics mattered. They were right. They were solving the correct problem from the last war. Helmand was not Korea. The distances were different, the terrain was different. The adversary's doctrine, which evolved to exploit the precise range limits of the kit the British Army had adopted, was different. The men on the ground knew this. Units held onto the L7A2 wherever they could, despite official doctrine requiring the LSW to replace it. This was not insubordination. It was the preservation of a capability that the procurement timeline had already written off. What the L7 GPMG's service life demonstrates is not that old weapons are better. It is that the gap between what a military institution plans for and what soldiers actually fight is not correctable by planning alone. The institution plans for the war it can see. The soldier fights the one that arrives. The weapon that both sides carried on Mount Longdon in 1982 will be in British service until at least 2035. Every time the paperwork declared it finished, it was already back in the sections. That is not an accident. That is the answer. If you like this type of content, hit subscribe. There's more coming.